Professor Tuhina Verma ma'am, shall we start the program? As we can see, sufficient number of participants has joined us and many of them are watching live stream on YouTube also.
Yes, Manisha, I think we should start the program.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. So, a very good morning to one and all present here for this webinar organized on the topic of health issues in women and child in view of breastfeeding during COVID-19, organized by Women Grievance and Welfare Cell, Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia, Awadh University, Ayodhya. First of all, I welcome our today's guest speaker, Dr. Sudeshna Saha ma'am. Welcome, ma'am. I also welcome Professor Tuhina Verma ma'am, Coordinator of Women Grievance and Welfare Cell. I also welcome all the delegates, faculty members, dean, directors, and participants joined here for this webinar. As per tradition of our university, I request to the technical team to please play Kulgeet.
ज्ञान का मंदिर, कला विज्ञान का मंदिर, हमारा विश्वविद्यालय, अवध की शान का मंदिर। यही गंगा, यही यमुना, यही है भारती माता, त्रिवेणी है यही अपनी, मिले है सत्य शिव सुंदर। यही तीर्थ, यही संगम, यही भगवान का मंदिर, यही है ज्ञान का मंदिर, कला विज्ञान का मंदिर। हमारा विश्वविद्यालय, अवध की शान का मंदिर। हिमालय से पुण्य की धारा, लुटाता ज्योति का सोना, जहाँ सूरज था सहारा। जहाँ श्री राम का घर है, जहाँ हनुमान का मंदिर, वही है ज्ञान का मंदिर, कला विज्ञान का मंदिर। हमारा विश्वविद्यालय, अवध की शान का मंदिर। कथा रघुवंश की कहते, जहाँ के धूल के कण कण, जहाँ की राजधानी राम के, साम्राज्य की पावन, वहीं पर है बनाए है राष्ट्र के उत्थान का मंदिर, वही है ज्ञान का मंदिर, कला विज्ञान का मंदिर। हमारा विश्वविद्यालय, अवध की शान का मंदिर। कभी गूंजे जहाँ पर मौत जैनों की अमर वाणी, जवानों और मुगलों की कला की भूमि कल्याणी। यही काबा, यही काशी, यही इंसान का मंदिर, यही है ज्ञान का मंदिर, कला विज्ञान का मंदिर। हमारा विश्वविद्यालय, अवध की शान का मंदिर। अमर शिल्पी हुआ तुलसी, बना कर काब का पुष्कर, बने तूफान जिसमें सात सुंदर चार घाटों पर, जहाँ निर्मित हुआ वह राम के आख्यान का मंदिर, वही है ज्ञान का मंदिर, कला विज्ञान का मंदिर। हमारा विश्वविद्यालय, अवध अवध की शान का मंदिर, यही है सत्य का मंदिर, यही है न्याय का मंदिर, यही तप ज्ञान का मंदिर, यही स्वाध्याय का मंदिर, शिखर यह शंभु के कैलाश का कल्याण का मंदिर, यही है ज्ञान का मंदिर, कला विज्ञान का मंदिर, हमारा विश्वविद्यालय अवध की शान का मंदिर, अवध की शान का मंदिर, अवध की शान का मंदिर।
Thank you so much, technical team. Now, to proceed over the session, I would like to invite Professor Tuhina Verma ma'am for presidential address and oath-taking ceremony. Over to you, ma'am.
A very good afternoon. First of all, I am Dr. Shah from Vishwa Bharati University in this webinar under the Mission Shakti Phase 4, organized by Women Grievance and Welfare Cell of our university. So welcome you, ma'am, from the entire university family. I also would like to welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Chief Proctor, Professor Ajay Pratap sir, our DSW, Professor Neelam Pathak, all the officers of the university, our faculty members, all members of Women Grievance and Welfare Cell, and the students over here. As we all know that COVID-19 had many adverse impact on our lives, on the social, mental, economical, and health. There are several issues. So today, Dr. Shah will enlighten us that what is the high risk of COVID-19 for women and child health. And she will also let us know about the health issues of women and child's in of this breastfeeding during COVID-19 pandemic. So, however, there were several advantages as well as disadvantages of breastfeeding. So today, COVID-19 pandemic, so I think it will be a very much valuable information for all of us, which Dr. Shah will tell us. And with all these words, I would like to invite Dr. Shah once again in this program. Thanks to all of you.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, audible, ma'am. So thank you so much, Professor Tuhina Verma, ma'am.
Now, I think the oath for the Dr. Manisha.
Yes, ma'am. Now it's time for oath-taking ceremony. So once again, I invite Professor Tuhina Verma, ma'am, for oath.
So, बालिका सुरक्षा शपथ जो कि सभी टीचर्स, सभी अभिभावकों द्वारा लिया जाना है. So I request our technical team to kindly grant permission to unmute everyone.
Yes, ma'am, done.
Okay, thank you. सभी लोग अपने आप को अनम्यूट कर सकते हैं. हम लोग की तरफ से परमिशन ग्रांट कर दी गई है. तो सभी लोगों से रिक्वेस्ट है कि अपने आप को अनम्यूट कर लें. तो बालिका सुरक्षा शपथ सभी टीचर्स, अभिभावकों से, सभी पेरेंट्स से लेना है, उनके द्वारा लिया जाना है. तो पहले हम शपथ बोलेंगे, उसके बाद आप लोग काइंडली उसको रिपीट करिएगा. शपथ इस प्रकार है. भारत के जिम्मेदार नागरिक के रूप में,
भारत के जिम्मेदार
नागरिक के रूप में
मैं शपथ लेती हूँ
लेता हूँ
कि मैं अपने बेटे और बेटी में किसी प्रकार का भेद नहीं करूंगी. मैं अपने बच्चों को बचपन से ही जीवन के नैतिक मूल्य सिखाऊंगी.
जीवन के नैतिक मूल्य सिखाऊंगा
और उन्हें और गलत का भेद बताऊंगी।
और उन्हें सही और गलत का
भेद बताऊंगा।
जिस प्रकार मैं अपनी बेटी को
जिस प्रकार मैं अपनी बेटी को
स्वयं की सुरक्षा के लिए
स्वयं की सुरक्षा के लिए
ध्यान रखने को कहती हूँ,
ध्यान रखने को कहती हूँ,
उसी प्रकार अपने बेटे को
उसी प्रकार अपने बेटे को
अनुशासन में रखते हुए उसकी भी दैनिक गतिविधियों का पूरा ध्यान रखूंगी। जय हिंद, जय भारत।
जय हिंद, जय भारत।
आप सभी को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Thank you so much, ma'am. I request all to please mute yourself. Now, to proceed over the session, today our university and we are really blessed to have such an eminent speaker with us from a central university. So to proceed over the session, I would like to introduce you all with Dr. Saha. Dr. Sudeshna Saha is at present working as Assistant Professor at Department of Social Work, Vishwa Bharati Central University, Shantiniketan, West Bengal. She did her post-graduation in social work from Banaras Hindu University in 2007 and her PhD also from Vishwa Bharati University in 2018. Ever since her master's, she was teaching Master of Social Work at Acharya Institute of Management and Sciences, Bangalore. She also taught in the Department of Social Work, Jana Bharati Campus, Bangalore University. After that, she also taught in Social Work Department at Assam Central University before joining Vishwa Bharati University in 2012. At present, she has 14 plus years of UG and PG teaching experience along with many PhD guideship. Her area of specialization mainly incorporates social responsibility, women empowerment, women livelihood issues, industrial relations, and others. She has presented various research papers in national and international reputes of conference and seminars. Besides, she has several publications in renowned international and national level journals. She attended national and international level workshops, faculty development programs, and is active member of such extracurricular activities also. She is also associated with several professional bodies. With these words, now I request to please proceed in the session, Dr. Saha. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for such a warm welcome, and I feel that I'm privileged enough to be part of such a program. It's a real honor for me to be a woman and to join this Tri Shakti and Mission Shakti program for women empowerment and women emancipation. So with the few words, I would like to proceed further towards my today's presentation. So may I be allowed for screen sharing, please?
Yes, definitely, ma'am.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am, clearly.
Okay. So today's topic for discussion is health issues in women and child in view of breastfeeding during COVID-19. Now, let me just make a candid confession that I was preparing my lecture on health issues in women and children, but breastfeeding is a just recent inclusion yesterday night. So I just added some of the slides on it. So basically, to start with, we all know that we had a very tough time from 2020-21 and still it is going on. So we are the sailors in the same boat, because worldwide we were victims, we were suffering from the COVID-19 pandemic. So this has put the entire life of the people across the globe into a grinding halt. So the fast-moving humanity suddenly came to a screeching halt. So across every sphere, from health to economy, from security to social protection, the impact of COVID-19 has been very much rampant, especially on the women and girl children by virtue of their sex. Women and girls have unique health needs, but they are less likely to have equal access to quality healthcare services, essential medicines, vaccines, maternal and reproductive health care, insurance coverage for routine and catastrophic health costs, especially in the rural and marginalized communities. Restrictive social norms and gender stereotypes can also limit the women's ability to access standard health services. All of this has particular impact on their widespread health crisis. So we find that as we have pandemic, and on top of that, women are at a double-edged sword. So women may be at risk of exposure due to their occupational sex segregation. Globally, women make about 70% of the health workforce and more likely to be the frontline health workers, especially nurses, midwives, community health workers. They are also the majority of health services, service staff such as cleaners, laundry women, catering service provider, and so on and so forth. Now, unequal access to healthcare services, as I said, that special attention needed to be given to the health and psychosocial needs and work environment of the frontline workers. Now, it so happens that the frontline workers, they do their job, but they are not given the access to the protective devices that is going to, help her or help a woman to shield herself from the virus. So we find that the personal protective equipments, which are made in the size which is maybe not appropriate for women. It is found that the mask and the covers that are size using the default man size often are used, often are given to the women. So they, this results to more of their vulnerability. It exposes them more to the risk of infection. So there is always a risk to the hygiene and the sanitation issues. For example, the sanitary pads, soaps, hand sanitizers are not so much readily available to the female health workers, women and girl childs, particularly those who are quarantined for prevention, screening, and treatment. So this heightens their risk, while the working women are working in their community setting, and so they are readily exposed to this COVID-19 virus. And once the women gets infected, automatically their children, their family members also get infected as a result of that. Faulty dissemination and appropriate knowledge on public health and hygiene issues. Now, this is also another important, am I audible, everybody? There is some technical glitches.
Yes, ma'am. Audible, ma'am. Clearly
Okay.
Audible.
So faulty dissemination of appropriate knowledge on public health and hygiene issues. This amounts to that the healthcare responses must facilitate the development and dissemination of the targeted messaging on healthcare to different sectors and sections of the population, especially the women who are semi-literate or illiterate, and they are, residing in the far-flung areas, the remote areas, where proper dissemination of how to, follow or maintain the appropriate inappropriate COVID behavior, it's does not often reach this particular women. So as a result of that, they are not following the COVID induced guidelines, and therefore these particular women are also in the risk of getting diseased, getting the infection and infecting others, especially the women who are there in the conflict zones or who are in the hilly areas. It is very difficult nowadays to access the women in the far-flung areas, as we find that due to the uproar of the nature, we have so many natural calamities coming up. So the women who are staying in those remote corners where they have to face the brunt of the nature. So to reach those women, to show, to make them aware of the COVID behavior is a bit challenging. So we have, and that now people will say that now mobile phones are always there for knowledge and information dissemination, but in those far-flung areas, sometimes network issues, technical glitches, all are part and parcel of their life. So government should make a real extra effort so that the basic knowledge regarding any sort of public health guidelines and issues should reach one and everybody, especially the women folk. Next is that impact on sexual and reproductive health. The provision of sexual and reproductive health services include maternal health care and gender-based violence-related activities that are central to women's health. They must be aware of their right and well-being. The diversion of attention and critical resources away from these provisions may result in aggravated maternal mortality, morbidity, increased rate of adolescent pregnancies, HIV, and other sexually transmitted diseases. It is estimated that women will lose regular access to modern contraceptive as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and COVID-19 pandemic induced lockdown. So in the subsequent slides, we will be, we will be dealing with how women are vulnerable as they are cut off from these particular services. Now, attention to be paid to more standardized healthcare services. There should be provisions for standard health services, especially, as I already mentioned, sexual and reproductive health care, because this is one juncture, or this is one domain where most women, they fall short of. So as a result, women, they have a lot of, especially the pregnant women, the lactating women, they lack several services like antenatal, postnatal, delivery services, and it leads to emergency obstetric and gynecological issues, newborn care. Necessary infection control measures should also take place. HIV/AIDS access and services needed to be maintained with no interruptions, particularly but not exclusively in terms of prevention of mother and child transmission of HIV and other sort of viruses and infections. Now, the most important, emphasis is breastfeeding. And as we all know that we are going through the breastfeeding week, and this is the last day for the breastfeeding week, which has started in August 1. So from August 1st to August 7th, it is observed as an International Breastfeeding Week. Now, breastfeeding is basically a key to sustainable development strategy during and post-pandemic. Breast milk is declared to be the purest form of children nutrition. Breastfeeding week, as I said, it is declared from 1st to 7th August, and it is celebrated since 1992. And it is celebrated in more than 120 countries across the globe. It is an initiative which is taken by UNICEF. However, much artificial baby formula food has been discovered, but still there is no alternative to mother's milk. So government is taking a lot of initiative and proactive in promoting breastfeeding. So breastfeeding week and day is observed every year. But when the pandemic ensued, pregnant and lactating mothers were confused, especially who are positive. They were confused and discouraged to feed their babies the breast milk for the fear of passing the virus through the milk from the mother to the baby. Though researchers are yet to prove this through research. So initially, lactating mothers were in confusion whether the virus spread through breast milk or not. But United Nations have come up with a lot of initiative. The United Nations World Health Organization advocates and recommends for exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months for infants to achieve optimal health and development, followed by complementary food, while to continue breastfeeding till second year or 2 years and beyond. So breastfeeding should continue along with complementary food till compulsorily till second year, and it can be beyond that. Public health awareness events such as breastfeeding, as this I have told already, and also training of professionals and planning in this regard is initiated by UN bodies, both at micro and macro level, to promote and to campaign more and more for breastfeeding. Support to countries with weak public health and social support systems includes countries in humanitarian situations and support in the sphere of awareness generating, especially targeted to women and girls who have newly married and who are pregnant or about to be mothers. This also, support is also extended to the HIV positive women and also women with disabilities, so that they can understand that how to continue this breastfeeding even during the time of the pandemic. In addition, the United Nations is working with government and partners to ensure and continue attention to sexual and reproductive health for both women and girls. Next is that now we will come to the various, sufferings of women at various levels during this pandemic-induced lockdown. COVID-19 pandemic is creating profound shock worldwide with different implications to women and girls. Women are serving as frontliners during COVID, with impact of its crisis on women's health. So women face compounding burdens. They are overrepresented in the working sectors, also in the health systems, and also they are engaged in various unpaid caregiving work in their households. And as a result, they face high risk of economic insecurity and face increased risk of violence, exploitation, harassment in times of crisis and during the times of quarantine. The pandemic has had and will continue to take a major toll on the health and well-being of these various vulnerable groups. As the COVID pandemic deepens, economic and social stress coupled with restricted movement and social isolation measures, gender-based violence are increasing exponentially. Many women are forced to lock down at home with their abusers. At the same time, that services to support the survivors are already disrupted and are made almost inaccessible. Disruption of vital services during lockdown. Disruption to essential services due to COVID-19 pandemic are being felt broadly. As the world marks its International Women's Day, a new World Health Organization analysis finds out that women's health services are far from being fully restored, with less developed countries reporting disruptions in sexual, reproductive, maternal, newborn, child, and adolescent healthcare services. Physical, sexual, and intimate partner violence. During pandemic, women and girls are facing rising risk of sexual violence due to lockdown, economic uncertainties, decrease in the access to key support and health services, and increased stress in the household. Globally, it is seen that WHO estimated that 245 million women and girls aged 15 years and above are subjected annually to sexual and physical violence, which is often perpetrated by their intimate partners. And let me tell you that during this lockdown, a lot of divorce cases are being registered because of the intimate partner violence. Loss of job, economic insecurity, and resultant depression on women. So of course, we find that the daycare centers, schools, after school programs have all shut or closed. So it has increased the burden on mothers. And if the mother is a working mother, then double the responsibility. So we find this has resulted and increase in the home front activity or increase in the household chores have reduced the women's concentration and attention to the work activities or in the work front. So many of the women have left their jobs, sitting ideal at home. They have lost their flow of income, so they are suffering from extreme economic insecurity. Coupled with that, too much of the burden of the household work. This has resulted women to get depressed, locked at home, frustrated, and morose. And on top of that is the stringent COVID guidelines. During this testing times, all of us have to stay home and maintain social distancing, and also to maintain good hygiene, not to step out unless it is absolutely necessary. We have to frequently wash our hands, it is the time for the humanity to slow down. So pre-COVID, we were rushing, humanity was rushing in their usual rat race, but suddenly the world has slowed down, humanity has slowed down, and then we are all inside our homes. It is the time to lock the doors and stay home and spend quality time with each other and to understand each other. But have we really understood each other, or too much proximity has breed in contempt? As global citizens, it's a noble duty to adhere to the strict rules of lockdown so as to combat the spreading of this deadly virus, which has the capacity of fast spreading and affecting thousands of lives at a time. Next, we have children and their psychological stress. It is not easy to manage kids who are of school-going age. While physically small, children still experience big emotions, but they lack the skills and defense mechanism to cope up with the ongoing crisis. They do not understand what is COVID-19, what is lockdown, but they only understand that their freedom are curtailed. They are not allowed to go out of their houses. They are not allowed to go to parks, to meet their friends, to play with their friends, to run on the road. So children are getting frustrated, irritated, and they also started suffering from psychological stress. Being confined to houses and flat or room make them feel paranoid. They throw tantrums every time when they are asked to wear masks. Further, washing hands from time to time made a lot of children to develop the symptoms like obsessive compulsive behavior, because they are frequently washing their hand at the behest of their parent. Claustrophobia, confinement to home, and mental health issues in girl children. Various studies have shown that these children who are locked at home are suffering from depression because of the extreme and challenging fear and phobia of closed spaces. They are locked up with their parents who often beat them, because the parents have also a lot of burden of managing both their work and the home front. However, staying inside the confined spaces take a toll on their mental health, especially for the people who are suffering from, especially for the children who are constantly suffering from anxiety, paranoia, depression. And especially, if you are residing in big cities like Mumbai and Delhi, where already there is shortage and crunch of space. Flats are reduced to shoeboxes apartments that are not well lit and well ventilated. So people who used to spend their maximum time of their day outside, now all are confined within the four walls. So automatically, ventilation, air movement, and too much cooks to spoil the broth kind of an environment is created in this particular time. So children started to feel very much suffocated and claustrophobic. Bleak future for girl children and youth. Girl children too are affected by lockdown. Parents are overburdened with household chores, so not much time is dedicated to parenting. So children suffer. They just obey whatever the adults take decision on their behalf. They have unexpressed anxiety. Some of them fear that when their exams will take place, The board exam candidates, they wait for TV announcement that whether their board exam is likely to take place or whether it is going to be cancelled, whether internal marks will be taken into consideration. The students who are in class 12, the entire future is lying ahead of them, but they do not have any clue whether they will have to sit for board exam or whether it is going to be online or offline exam. So the outgoing school students, they faced a lot of trauma, and not only the outgoing school student, I should say, even the outgoing college students for that matter. Suddenly entire thing came to a standstill. People are locked at home, so they are in paranoia and stress and traumatic situation, not understanding what their future lies ahead of them. So they are confused. So a lot of this children, they suffered from mental health issues. The youths also, they risk, the youths who are about to go for campus placements, who are about to seek jobs, suddenly everything became haywire. So a dismal state of affair, the career is at stake, the job prospect is at stake. So this lead to various suicidal tendency among youths, and a lot of suicide cases were registered. We have seen in the newspaper how many youths, they committed suicide or attempted to commit suicide because of the knowing about their unknown future ahead. Okay, now the mental health of the children, especially the girl children. I have focused mainly on the girl children here, who are already, they are having some mental health issues, like the autistic children, the schizophrenic children, the children with dementia. These autistic children, they have typical ritualistic behavior. They always need to be engaged. And so caregivers should come, they should take them for a stroll. But during lockdown, their movements are prevented. So by the police officials and the curfew, these autistic children, they do not understand what is going on. So they just felt that their normal day-to-day activity is getting hampered. So even if they are being taken by any of their caregivers, or even the caregivers, if they are absent, many family members, they took them out for a stroll or something, they are being harassed and beaten up by the police officials. People with schizophrenia wander away. Sometimes those people with schizophrenia, they have gone out of their house to be chased by the police, even beaten up at times. Another group of people who suffer from mental health issues have suffered tremendously are the people who are suffering from dementia. These people who live with dementia hardly express their feelings. They need care. They need their caregivers to touch them, to feed them, to take them to bathrooms, to toilets, to change their clothes. So they are dependent on their caregivers for everything that goes on in their life. But sudden announcement of lockdown and social distancing have created havoc. They do not understand that when what this lockdown is all about, their caregivers are not able to reach them. So it has created a very crisis situation for these already mentally the children who are differentially abled. So they have suffered like anything. Another aspect which the children, girl children and boys, they have suffered is the digital dependency and the digital divide. The children became digital dependent as their classes were arranged online, resulting in many children to develop eye strains, redness, develop power, eyesight problem at a very tender age. It has created digital divide as not all the children or girl children possess smartphones, computers to continue their online classes. So many girls have dropped out of the schools altogether. There are several reports that various child marriages occurred during lockdown because the parents who are really poor, they felt that during lockdown, they do not have to feed many people in the name of marriage. So let us get their, little girls married off with very meager amount of money for their marriages. So as these girl children has already dropped out of their schools because they are not able to afford the online education, so they have been married off. There are cases reported in many states about suicides, not able to cope up with other students in digital education. for not possessing digital devices. Yes, several studies are reported in West Bengal also that I mean, if a father who has got two children, one daughter and one son, thus even if he has brought new smartphone, it is given to the son and not the daughter, and the daughter is not able to cope up with the other children in the school who have the access to this digital devices. So as a result, they have committed suicide. The young girls, the school going girls and boys, irrespective, they have committed suicide because of this inaccessibility to take this online system of education that was in vogue and during the lockdown times. Next, plight of Girl Street children, orphans and missing children. So NDTV India had launched a campaign on missing girl children, missing children. But since this webinar is on women and girl child, so I've emphasized on girl child more. So there was a campaign by NDTV on missing girl children. Like it has held a campaign that suddenly the girls who used to reside, the small girls who were rescued, or they used to live in the streets, the platforms, the bus stands, the dockyards, the railway and railway platforms and all. Suddenly, when the entire country was declared to be locked at their respective homes, these children have no place to go because they do not have any home to go. So they were found missing by either getting trafficked or abducted. COVID orphans also had a worse fate. Lots of reports on girl child trafficking were registered during the entire lockdown period. So this is a very sorrowful state of affair that we were all locked inside our home, but what about those children who are homeless? So a lot of missing children, some of them are reported, some went unreported completely. Next, we come to the women and how women have suffered this pandemic. So violence on women, even interpersonal relationship during the lockdown period has gone for a toss. Couples struggle to cope with each other. Violence crept on spouse, children, elderly, parents, dependent sons and daughters. The members do not get access and space to cope with one another. Hundreds of divorce cases were filed and registered during lockdown, as I have already said. So COVID-19 and following lockdown has brought in a different paradigm in relationships among women with other members of the family. The women folk became victims of domestic violence, both physical and emotional, during lockdown. It increased the proximity with the perpetrators or abusers with the victims. It may be their husbands who may be drunkard or abusive. They might squabble over financial issues and other economic crises. People who are from the broken families, who do not see eye to eye with their family members, whose only relief is to come out of the family and spend time with friends and other social gathering after this sudden lockdown, they got confined into spaces and they felt uncomfortable, isolated, to share spaces with their own family members, especially who are perpetrators and abusers. Teenage girls who love to socialize and so-called party freaks felt helpless and depressed during this lockdown times. They felt that they feel mentally disturbed and worrisome. Homebound shakes them in and out. There are extreme cases of people feeling suicidal when they stay alone and all locked down. Yes, especially the people who are staying alone. For them, lockdown and pandemic induced phase was like suicidal. And you know that there were cases where families were ostracized because previous detection, just after the lockdown was announced, the people who were tested positive, they were being ostracized, they were being kept aside. The entire they were considered to be a social taboo. So they were absolutely confined to closed spaces and nobody are allowed to mix up with them. So their own survival was at stake because nobody is there to, market for them, to serve them food. So it was so gruesome during the initial phase of, COVID pandemic, and the people who, became affected by this particular virus initially. Next, we come to the mental health of the pregnant women. Studies added on pregnant women during the times of coronavirus outbreak worldwide faced isolation in the labor rooms, postpartum depression, decreased nutrition, less support for breastfeeding, and transitioning to the role of parenting amidst the social distancing. So it is a time to create a bonding with the newborn baby, but the new mothers, they were always advised that wear your mask, avoid proximity with your child. So the time for forming the bonding with the child was the time to be announced for social distancing, and the new mothers were very much confused because no mothers want their child to be infected. So for that, a lot of confused state. It is a confusion for the newborn mothers, that what to do, how to deal with the infant who is newly born. Even the spouses were not allowed in the labor rooms for the fear of virus. United States also showed sharp drop in the number of birth teams, including community health workers, midwives, physicians, as well as people who are busy in socially distancing themselves and busy dealing with virus-affected patients. The stress is on vaginal delivery rather than C-section for the fear of contamination. So not only in US, that health workers, they started to make a no contact kind of a diagnosis. May it be doctors or nurses, they were busy to shield themselves because of the initial fear that people had in their mind in contacting the virus. So at that particular time, whoever have become a mother or whoever conceived, they face a real ordeal, because most of the hospitals, they were running short of doctors and nurses and other healthcare frontline workers who were fearful in the fear of transmission of the disease. So there were not much availability of the PPE kits in the initial times. So this particular patients, they really had a challenging time, especially the pregnant mothers, the lactating mothers. Next, limited information on medication, vaccination on pregnant women and lactating mothers. As I said that previously there was a fear in the minds that through breast milk you may risk your child. Whether you can take when vaccination came into the foreplay, again there was a confusion whether it can be injected to the pregnant mothers, because no trials were done on the pregnant women, so as to see that whether vaccines are working on these pregnant women or not. So these pregnant women were always, they were threatened that you cannot take the risk of risking yourself with the virus. If you do it, or if you catch the virus, then it is going to be detrimental for not only your health but also the health of the newborn baby. So a lot of it took a lot of toll and a lot of tension, trauma in their minds. So there were no high quality evidence to conclude the impact of COVID-19 on pregnancy outcomes. However, some inferences can be taken from the studies describing the effect of SARS on pregnant outcomes. COVID-19 seemed to be less lethal as compared to SARS and MERS. However, the risk of spontaneous miscarriage and preterm delivery due to COVID-19 may not be ruled out. Although at least a study indicates that no increasing risk of spontaneous preterm birth and spontaneous abortion in COVID-19 women, there are reports of preterm birth in women who are affected by this COVID-19. Data on psychological nature of COVID-19 on pregnant women were also limited. However, the pathophysiology related to MERS and SARS in pregnant women may provide valuable insight. There is currently no evidence to conclude that COVID-19 is not an indication for medical termination of pregnancy. Pregnancy may result in immunosuppression to prevent the rejection of semi-allogenic fetus. There is increased estradiol level that suppresses inflammatory cytokine production and promotes the anti-inflammatory cytokine release. This change may expose the pregnant individual to more severe respiratory infections. So a lot of confusions were created because for a lay woman, it is not possible for her to know this particular things in details, the pathological, details. Okay, so this has also resulted in a lot of people having confusion, and they were very much at alarm and jittery. The disruptions, in medical healthcare services has resulted in, disruption in the birth control measures. And so a lot of, unwanted pregnancies, teenage pregnancies, they started to feature during this pandemic. But later on, it is advised that mothers should wear mask, wash hand with soap and water for about 20 seconds, clean their breasts properly before, touching any palms or bottle that are for, expressing their breast milk. And researchers of late, they concluded that coronavirus do not spread through breast milk, so it is safer for babies. But the new moms could spread the virus to the infants through their tiny droplets while talking or sneezing or coughing. So it is best way that you cover up yourself, you mask up yourself before you feed your child, so as to prevent any sort of contamination of the virus through mother to child. Now we will come to how the elderly women and the differentially abled or disabled women, they suffered during the pandemic. As we know that elderly women are already vulnerable, and especially, persons with disability or the differentially abled people, they are asked to stay away from public. This has deepened their loneliness. The persons with disability who are wheelchair bound have to vehemently depend on their caregivers, have little options of social distancing. So lockdown periods acted as a stressor for them. When they do not have any online shopping options, majority of the elder women or the differentially abled women, they do not know the know-hows of online shopping. So they had to depend on the local kirana shops which were all closed, or the timings were fixed. So, e-commerce mechanisms, deliberately, they started canceling orders because of the tantamounting of orders, and the immobility of the vehicle, which is as a result of the lockdown. Especially for the elder women who were anxious that their weak health might not fight the virus. And suppose they have any comorbidity issues, they might have to stay alone from their family members who are staying in different parts of the city or country or abroad. They are stressed and insecure and stranded. They felt bereft of their freedom of movement. They got anxious that who will give them food, who will give them medicines, who will give them money for hospitalization, who will come and see them in the hospital, who is going to admit them to the hospital due to the crisis-induced lockdown. So if any challenge or if any emergency comes up, who will take the challenge? And so their entire life and livelihood were at risk. Their physical and mental challenges were really heart-wrenching. Now, trauma of women migrant laborers during pandemic. Now, this goes without saying, because right from the first wave to the second wave, we have seen how the women migrant laborers, they suffered. Sudden announcement of the lockdown made them very anxious about their bleak future ahead. So all the vehicles, all the communication mode was stopped. So we have seen the pictures of women, all kind of women, may it be pregnant women, may it be lactating women, may it be old women, may it be youthful women who are, walking distance, miles after miles and kilometers after kilometers to reach their native places. We have seen that women, they are, they are carrying their young ones in their lap, they are carrying their young ones on top of their suitcases. We have seen how they are not allowed to enter into their villages at the first go. They are been, small scale, sanitization spray was sprayed on them so that so as to ensure that they are virus free before they are allowed inside. So we have seen and a lot of, this migrant labor, women and men both, they died due to lack of water, lack of proper sanitation. A lot of women, they got abortions in the mid of their journey. They died due to accidents which took place every now and then. We have seen migrant labor men who died while they were sleeping on the railway tracks. So those pictures are still palpable, that how they suffered, how the women and men, especially the pregnant women, laborers who traveled kilometers after kilometers back home, how they are treated, how they suffered during the entire phase of lockdown. So it is such a sorrowful state of affair that they had to, they had to had experienced such a traumatic situation. Next set of women who suffered most is the sex workers, the HIV/AIDS victims, the substance abuse victims, women prisoners, women beggars. So these particular group of group of women, they suddenly they are the worst sufferers, because they, for the lack of care, the lack of income, lack of access to services, social security is rationed, lack of hospitalization, fear of the uncertain future, lack of information, fake news, fear of being quarantined. So these particular group of women, suddenly their income stopped. So they do not have any social security to fend for them. So suddenly they, they used to depend upon the community kitchen, who is to serve them food. Sometimes, standing in the long queues often expose them to the risk of contamination of the virus. So these particular group of women who are belonging from the, less privileged background, the sex workers, the beggars, the prostitutes, the HIV and AIDS, victims, suddenly the services of this ART also stopped, or they were suspended for the time being. So how they suffered, um, that is very that is also, that is uh, very sorrowful. So before I conclude, let me tell you that women across the entire strata of the society suffered, may it be from a very newborn baby to absolute old woman. All the women in different sectors, they suffered. They either they suffered for the lack of information, or due to their remote location, they suffered. They suffered as a result of their work. They suffered in the front line. Maybe they are working and they are contacting virus. They are being quarantined. They are ostracized. Lack of proper facility to healthcare, proper safety devices were not given to them, or they are burdened with a lot of domestic responsibility, domestic chores. Suddenly the children were locked down at home. So managing the children, managing the in-laws, managing the spouse, it is very much difficult for the women, especially for the working women, because at the work front also you are given a lot of tasks, maybe even if you are working online from home. So we find managing both ends became a very much challenge for the women. So on top of that, if you have an abusive spouse, then it is a double the problem. You're confined with the strugglesome spouse. Now, if you take leave, or if you go leave without pay, or if you leave your job, then you suffer from economic insecurity. That will amount to more violence on you if you are a working woman and suddenly your income stops. So perpetration and violence will be more. So if you there is risk of a lot of helpline numbers, they were not working. Women tried to reach out, tried to voice their grievances, but it was not there. Lot of these lines were crashed because of frequent phone and frequent phone calls. So many numbers went unanswered. So many cases of domestic violence were registered. So many divorce cases were filed during this particular lockdown. Then we had the children, the girl children, and also the other children. They were suffering. They were suddenly they had no friends to play, no friends to go out to their normal schooling life were suddenly disrupted. Online education was a new thing which was introduced, with no teachers being trained what is online education. Suddenly everything turned online. There was no data, no particular instruction that how the online system has to take place, how online materials to be given. So online education is good for children from higher classes, college, university, but not for toddlers. Toddlers cannot sit in front of this, mobile phones or the computers for long hours. So they developed, a mental problem. They developed depression. They developed anxiety. They started having eyesight problem. So they suffered, on the top of that, parents also suffered. Parents wanted their children to go back to the schooling, the normal schooling, but the schools were closed. The passing out students, they had a bleak future. They do not know when campusing will again take place, when will they get job, whether they will get a job, whether they will sit for their board exam, or whether it is going to be online, or whether previous exam marks will be calculated. So a lot of placement offers, they were taken, they were withdrawn. So these youths, they suffered, the children suffered, the women suffered, the elderly, they suffered. The elderly women have nobody to take care of them, nobody to provide them medicine. Suppose all the, the zones were divided into red, yellow, and green zones. So the red zones, if your entire apartment is, locked, so if any particular elderly person face an emergency, so people take a lot of time to reach them. So they've had a lot of fear to, get their medicines on time, get proper hospitalization. The dialysis patient, the who need dialysis weekly, they suffered. The thalassemia children, who need blood every week, they suffered because blood banks, they went out of the reserve of the blood. There were no donors to come and, donate blood because of the fear of contamination of the virus. If you take your child to any pediatric center, they will not touch the child. But it is a no contact kind of a service which was going on, that without touching the child or without touching anybody, touching the patient, you diagnose. So the pregnant women, they were being diagnosed without the doctor reaching towards them. So they faced a lot of sufferings. Even personally saying, me, I was also pregnant during this particular time of lockdown. I know that how I also suffered, because the doctors, they didn't touch the patient. So it was so difficult, to ensure that you are being rightly diagnosed, you are being rightly been done the USG scans and everything. So this is it is creating a lot of mental trauma, mental issues on the pregnant women, the lactating women. So and of course the women who are already underprivileged, like I said, the women prisoners, the women sex workers, the brothel workers, the women who are HIV positive. So they suffered. Suddenly they're out of their income. Nobody came to, no clients were there to come to reach them. So they suffered. And of course, in the conclusion, I would say that, the question is that all the people in the society do not have equal access to the basic social infrastructure, the health infrastructure, even during normal time. Forget about that of a pandemic. The entire globe exposed to this pandemic is absolutely new. So they had lack of access to facilities of health, education, income, and livelihood. So how do we cope with these stressors? India have had a traditional approach of coping up with stressors or risk management. Policies act very slow here. We need to work on long-term resilience management in prevention of the vulnerability. We do not know how long we need to survive with the virus around us, but the fear of contamination affects our mental and physical well-being. We discriminate among people based on contamination by the virus. We should not label them or ostracize them or mudsling each other. Rather, we should work together in fighting this pandemic out. We need to work out strategies to build mechanisms to survive along with this virus, because this virus is not going. This COVID virus has to be part of our lives now, because we have seen that how in the first wave, this is how I have made my slides based on the first wave. But in the second wave, it is a different challenge altogether, where we find that patients, they were queuing in front of the hospitals for the lack of oxygen. Basically, it was the oxygen which basic oxygen, people suffered and people died. There were no hospital beds. Hospital beds were being sold out of lakhs of money. So the grim picture that we have all noticed during the second wave of pandemic also made the women and men suffer indiscriminately. So it is high time that we sort of work along with the government. The government make policies. It is we who have to build in and implement those strategies and policies along with our, the builders who build the policies, who build the schemes. We the common people, we need to cooperate, coordinate, rather than blaming each other or mudslinging each other. We need to together fight off this virus, which is not going so fast from our humanity. Like we live with HIV AIDS virus, similarly COVID virus will also has to be part of our life. So we need to build in our inbuilt system of inbuilt system of our resistance, inbuilt system of our we need to build ourselves in such a way that we do not, our body has to be built in such a way that we resist the virus. Our immune system should be very much strong. And so not only physically we should fight out the virus, but also infrastructure wise, socially, mentally, we need to fight together. So together we stand, and together we can fight the virus, and together we can see better future to come. Thank you very much.
In fact, thank you so much, ma'am, for enlightening us on such a relevant and important issue. Now, on behalf of Women Grievance and Welfare Cell, Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia, Awadh University, Ayodhya, I am glad to express my special thanks to our today's guest speaker, Dr. Saha ma'am, for accepting our invitation in such a short time and for being here with us today. I wholeheartedly thank all the dignitaries present here for sparing your valuable time with us. I thank all the participants for joining us here in this webinar. Now I request to the technical team to please play National Anthem.
अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उज्जल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Once again, thank you so much today's guest speaker, Dr. Saha ma'am. And I hope in near future also we will be enlightening us with your talks on such a relevant issues. Once again, thank you all for joining here. So
Thank you, ma'am.
So with this, we are ending our session here. Thanks all for joining.